All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and today I'm back with another video interview here. I'm here with hockey buzz writer, and as many of you know, one of the main Flyers beats, Bill Meltzer, writer for NHL.com. Bill, how are you doing? Thanks for doing this. I know you had a pretty long day. I appreciate you coming on with me this late at night, but nevertheless, thanks for doing this, and how are you?
My pleasure. It's after a number of years. Really, 2 off seasons ago, I get off season, but this felt almost like old times, just because of how many names the Flyers have been tied to and how many moves have been bandied about. Obviously, only a fraction of which actually come to fruition, but it seemed like every day there was something, from credible sources about stuff the Flyers were doing. So, it's been pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I feel like it's been arguably, I think the Ellis move was probably the biggest thing since they offer treated Shea Weber. So that kind of gives you a kind of, I guess, a good range on how long it's been since the Flyers have had this an impactful of an offseason. But starting with that and Ellis, since obviously that's kind of the big thing, the Flyers give up Myers and Patrick. What were your original thoughts on the deal? Did you like it at first? Did you not like it? Were you skeptical? Anything like that?
The Ellis trade?
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, there's really not much to question. Ellis is a very strong all around NHL defenseman. Yeah. I mean, I think that he steps right under your top pairing. Plays a lot of minutes. There's really nothing he doesn't do well. He's a team leader. The only thing you worry about is injuries. If you're missing Ellis 5 games a year because the way he plays, I mean, he doesn't give in his size at all, and he blocks a lot of shots and those kind of things. So, but what if you're missing him for long stretches of the season because Ellis is so critical to all the other pieces falling in place. Everything slots in an ideal way as long as you have a healthy Ellis and a healthy Provorov on the top. Right. Everything is predicated on that, on defense, and so much on the team plan as a whole. So if you have a healthy Ellis, you should be just fine. I know a lot of people brought up the term. The term is why his cap. Kimmo Timonen was 32 when he came to Philadelphia, and Ellis is 30. So I'm not. Defensemen can play well into their mid to late 30s. I'm not terribly worried about it as long as they can keep him pretty healthy. And it was a relief actually to hear that his injury last season was a broken knuckle and not a shoulder injury. He didn't have surgery, so that's all that's good.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the thing. I was going to ask you about that. Were you shocked when he said that? Because it seemed like a lot of people were like, "Wait."
I was. Yeah, I heard so many stories, too. So it was so many that you didn't. I mean, sometimes you'll see something and you'll see contradictory information, and and then you'll independently confirm it. But it was in so many places that it just seemed like background on it. I think it was Charlie O'Connor that asked Ryan about the shoulder, and I think it was Charlie, and it was just in a matter of fact kind of way because we'd all seen the same stories. And he's like, "Well, I didn't even know where that came from because I never hurt my shoulder." So but that was a relief. I mean, a broken knuckle you'll recover from, a hand injury. So that's that was good. And also very encouraging was that he came back for the stretch drive. He came back for the playoffs, and he looked like himself again. I mean, over the last 14 games of the season, put up 9 points between the playoffs and the regular season. Then he had 5 points in 6 games in the playoffs, and and say what you will about plus minus, but he was a traditional combined +7 between in that stretching. So he looked like himself. That's the biggest thing. So the injury from last year is over with. He's healthy, and I said, I mean, that is a huge addition to the blue line. Right, just by itself, that's a big upgrade.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, I think I looked at it as right from the gate, the Flyers got the number one hole that everybody talked about that was filled. They obviously made another one with getting rid of Myers, and they kind of had to do that because, again, in the world right now with the flat cap and everything, you have to give up something to get something, and that's not even just the world now. That's just more of the NHL in general. So obviously they give up Myers and Patrick. That ended up being a 3-team deal. But then the next day, or I believe it might have been a few days later, they ended up moving Ghost, and Ghost gets moved for cap, and then that ended up making sense the next day because Ristolainen gets brought in. The Flyers move out the first-round pick on draft day. What were your kind of thoughts as kind of all that unfolded? I guess to maybe start with Ghost and then Ristolainen, because I know it seems like the Ristolainen thing is like there's a side that really likes it. There's a side that doesn't like it at all. There's many few that are maybe in the middle. Bill, I know if you know me and you watch my stuff and you read everything, I'm more of the guy that is kind of just like wait and see until it's on the ice. And then that's when I'll kind of give my assessment. That's how I was with Gustafsson when that happened. I was like, okay, they get a power play guy. Let's see how it works. Obviously everybody knows how that went. So just give me your thoughts on Ghost and Risto and kind of how you kind of saw those two deals kind of break.
Sure. Well, we'll start with Ghost here. I mean, it was kind of a foregone conclusion after the season that he was not going to be brought back next season. One way or another, Ghost is going to be somewhere else next season. That was pretty obvious. When you put the player on waivers, and actually they tried to trade him last offseason during the season too. They couldn't move him because he was coming off of so many injuries and back-to-back down seasons, and there were just no takers at the time. And then he had some good stretches. He had some not so good stretches last year. Towards the end, actually, after he cleared waivers, he kind of put everything together for a while towards the end. Yeah. So that was actually, I thought it was actually his best stretch of the season overall. This was the latter part of the season. But you put a player on waivers and he clears, and then you put him in the expansion draft. And even though he's a first power play candidate, because that's his number one competency is offense. So I really thought there was a chance that Seattle might take him.
Yeah.
2 years to go on it. $4.5 million is, it's not a small cap, but it's not outrageous either. So I thought he might be picked, or some other team might say, pick him and flip him to us and get mid-round pick or something. But there wasn't any of that, and Seattle didn't take him. So now now you're really dealing from a position of weakness here, because everybody knows that you need cap space. Everybody knows that you've been basically trying to find other ways to get other teams to take this contract off your hands. And it's hard to move cap. And the Flyers didn't. The Flyers could have probably have gotten something that they retained, and there would have been more interest too. But the Flyers wanted the whole $4.5 million, so that's why they ended up with a pretty unfavorable trade from an asset standpoint, where you're trading the player, you're trading a second round pick, and you're trading a 7th round pick. And actually, that was a 7th round pick that came from Gustafsson trade. So both of those are in 2022. But what it did was it cleared off $4.5 million of cap space, and now the Flyers actually had more cap space slightly than they started with even before they got Ellis. So that's really why that was done.
I just wanted to add, I think going back to that, I think you tweeted something that they had like 910,000 more or something like that. It was like a little under $1 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about 910 more than they had before they, which wasn't, it was almost like a reset.
Right.
Now, okay, you've knocked the number one need off of there, which is the first pairing defenseman. And where do you go from? And so as you said, that led into the Ristolainen trade on the day of the draft.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I mean, I think from the most part, I personally for Ghost, I thought from the 2019-20 season on, he never really got used right. I thought it was kind of like if he messed up or if, he had a, maybe a crucial turnover or maybe he did something to work on the power play, he was either scratched or taken out of the lineup the next game, or he missed a couple games, whatever. And I kind of thought from there, if you're not going to use him, then just get rid of him. You try to use his cap, whatever. Then it seemed like he kind of was creeping back towards playing good again, and then he'd have a game where he didn't look so great. But then I thought at that point it was like, just give this guy a change of scenery, and that's kind of what they did in Arizona for Ghost. As for Risto, I don't mind Ristolainen. I mean, I at first when it happened, I didn't like it at all because it was the first round pick, and I'm like, you just gave up the 13th overall pick for a guy that, you know what I mean? I felt like that was a lot for what that is, because I don't like just giving up picks like that. I just felt like it was a big, really big return to get just a guy like that that you don't necessarily know, because at that point you're basically betting that they have bounce back seasons. So if you look at it like that, then,
well, yeah. I mean, I think I like Ristolainen more than a lot of people do, but not hockey people necessarily. I mean, Ristolainen is probably the poster child for the disconnect between scouts and the analytics community. And mind you, every NHL team has an analytics department, so that's all things that are weighed in there. But I mean the way that scouts tend to watch the game versus the people who are just looking only at the underlying numbers, the expected goal differentials, the the controlled exits, the Corsi numbers, whatever. I mean, that's people that hyper focus on that. And his numbers are very poor. They're among the worst in the league. There's context to everything, though. And even with all the bad numbers, there are plenty of things that he does well. I mean, I could spend this whole program going in the pros and cons of Ristolainen, but I'll give you the short version of it. The things that Ristolainen does really, really well, even though he's had poor analytics, actually very poor analytics, are that he's a guy 6'4", 220 who can really skate. Being a big guy who can skate and being right-handed on top of it will get you and keep you in the NHL for a significant period of time.
Yeah.
When you're a big guy, which he did 4 straight years, like power play, that'll certainly give you an NHL role. When you're a big, strong guy who can skate, get you 40 points a year if he gets sufficient power play time, and is third in the NHL in hits among defensemen, both last season, despite his bout with COVID, and over the last 5 years, that'll get you an NHL top 4. Now, where's Risto lacking a little bit? He's lacking the hockey sense side, and sometimes the temperament side, where he'll try to do too much, he'll run around a little bit, take himself out of position. He'll try to make the 20-foot pass when you only have to make the 10-foot pass. And a lot of it, players. The situation's been in Buffalo these years.
Yeah.
He's had 5 different coaches. He's had a revolving door of different partners. This is a case in point of how not to develop a player.
Right.
Yes, they took him 8th overall, and yes, he's big and strong physically and can skate. All those things I was just talking about. But very few 19-year-olds are ready to be put in the toughest defensive matchups on their team. Yeah. So you're a teenager. You just played the World Juniors. Now all of a sudden you're going up against Sidney Crosby and Patrice Bergeron on a very poor team, mind you. So any mistake you make is probably going to end up in the net, and there's a ton of pressure on you. And it's just been a revolving door there. So and I think you can even look at Buffalo's had trouble developing a lot of players, and I do have some concerns, at least to a degree, because I think that they've actually finally brought in a pretty decent coach. But if you watch Rasmus Dahlin, of course, who came in like 1st overall,
that seems like another guy. It's kind of the same
next
thing.
Nicholas Lidstrom, franchise defenseman. A lot of this past year, he looked like a deer in the headlights. Same situation. You throw all these responsibilities on him as a teenager. your whole team and the organization is a mess. And, again, plus minus is what it is, but, it still means something to players. And to be minus 36 weighs on the player's shoulders, no matter people can poo-poo the analytics side of it, but it matters to the player.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this year, Dahlin he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. It was the same thing for Ristolainen. It was the same forwards, but it's been a similar kind of thing. It's just not been a very conducive situation to succeeding. So, in Philadelphia, Ristolainen will have somewhat less duties. I mean, the heavy lifting on most nights should be done by Provorov and Ellis.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you have if you're struggling a little bit and he has to move down to the third pair. I mean, Braun has played a pretty fair amount with Sanheim, so you could here and there, you could change them up and whatnot, start them in the offensive zone. I mean, you have a lot of options. But he was actually a player that I advocated for, a year before, 4 or 5 months before he came in. He's a player I always like. If you get him out of Buffalo, put him in a better situation, I think you'll see some different results. I don't think he's ever going to be a stellar underlying numbers guy, because he will make his share of mistakes and he'll turn some pucks over and those kind of things. And sometimes those stay in your zone for a while, and some of those end up in the net. So I'm not expecting just a 180-degree turn on his analytics.
Right.
But I do think that his numbers will be better because because Sanheim is good at it. Sanheim. Right. Why does Sanheim have such good analytics? Because a large part of it is his ability to join the play up the ice and prolong possessions up there. You'll get 3 or 4 extra scoring, or those all add up in the analytics numbers. So I think that he should get a little bit of a bump if he's playing all the time with Sanheim. But as long as he simplifies things just a little bit and does what he does well, which is taking the body and providing a little bit of offense, I think he's fine in a number 4 role. That's the long answer.
Yeah. Right. And honestly, I kind of feel like since the Flyers moved Voracek, and it was kind of, I guess you could say, obvious that they were probably going to move on from Jake, he's another guy that kind of brings in that kind of swagger that they kind of lacked last year. Ristolainen, he's another guy. I mean, he's, as you said, he's 6'4", 220. He manhandles some guys on the ice. So, and that's the thing. I mean, and that was another thing that's another thing that I agree with too, is that, I mean, he's been on Buffalo his whole career. I mean, it's kind of like Gossespierre here. If he gets a change of scenery, something could change. And for Risto, I agree. I think there's really nothing too crazy there. And I think, as you said, I think if he's able to come in and just play his role, and if they can just come in and do what they have to do, then I see no issue with it. And then obviously the next deal is, I kind of just partially brought it up a little bit. Voracek for Atkinson, 1-for-1. This one broke my heart because Jake was my favorite player when he was here. That's why I have 93 at the end of my channel name. Bill, if I'm being honest with you, I gave it like a good 45-minute cry as it happened, because I was like, there's just I kind of was just shocked, if I'm being honest with you. I didn't think it was going to happen on draft day for day 2. But all around, Jake goes back to Columbus, Atkinson to Philly. What are your final thoughts on that one?
Well, I mean, you can compare it at a bunch of different points. Jake and Atkinson are both well-liked guys in the room for different reasons. They're both good guys, just different personalities. Atkinson is the real upbeat, go kind of guy. Jake is funny. Jake is a funny dude, and he always speaks his mind, and almost is a playmaking winger. Atkinson is more of a goal scorer offensively. He had a 40-goal year a couple of years ago. Jake will never touch 40 goals, but Atkinson will never touch 50 plus assists. So it's a bit of a trade-off there. two things the Flyers really wanted to accomplish this offseason. They wanted to change the leadership group. They wanted to improve the penalty kill. They have to improve the penalty kill.
Yeah.
Because if you clock in again at 30th on the PK, you're in trouble.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything.
So Atkinson is actually one of the absolute. Yeah. Oh no, they're not going to make the playoffs.
No.
Atkinson is one of the absolute best penalty killers in the NHL, and if you look back over the last 6 seasons, he's tied. I think it's with Aho and Marchand for the NHL lead shorthanded goals, including 4 this past year. So he can do that. He said he had 40 goal season. He's a guy who never gets outworked. As small as he is, he plays like a much bigger guy just because he's always working. He's always second and third efforts. He's actually has a very quick stick. I mean, he may lose battles. He may be overpowered at times, but he'll never be outworked. Yeah. And that's it's that that's a piece of it, and just that can-do, really positive, energetic attitude that he brings every single day. It's genuine. It's not an act with him. So he'll step right in, be part of the leadership group. He has friends already on the team. I think it's a perfect fit. I'm not concerned at all about the fit. The trade-off here is, although you're saving, I think, $2.8 million in cap, and he's the same age as Voracek. Voracek has 3 years, whereas Atkinson has 4. I don't know if Atkinson has four offensively productive years left in him. He'll still be a good penalty killing type. He'll still be a top 9 guy. I don't think he'll ever have another 40-goal season. But if he gets you in the 20s with all the other stuff that he brings, then that's that is the win. And the other thing too is this kind of fell into the Flyers' lap, but it came together quickly. It seemed like most of the talk had been about potentially Voracek moving for Tarasenko one way or another. Yeah. And for whatever reason, even after before and after he didn't get picked in the expansion draft, Doug Armstrong has kind of dragged his feet on moving Tarasenko and trying to show he's in control of the situation. Yeah. So, if that's what the Flyers were, they pivoted on it, and I think they ended up with maybe not as prolific of a goal scorer, but a guy who I think is a better fit for the team. So I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy with that trade, and I wish Jake all the best in Columbus too, because I like him as a player and a person.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, I thought when everything was kind of happening with St. Louis, and then they got Buchnevich that same the day of the draft, I was like, well, Tarasenko's got to be out now, right? Like, I had to think after they got Buchnevich, and then obviously Schwartz signs today in Seattle. It makes me wonder what's supposed to happen with Tarasenko. I heard Vegas a little bit. I don't know if they're still in the mix or not, but I'm curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, all the rumors with Vegas have been Eichel, but I think Buffalo's going to have a hard time moving Eichel because of the trade demand and health situation. I think I get it. You're going to trade a superstar. You're going to get one crack at it. Now, Eichel's not a McDavid, but he's in that next category down.
He's right in the Matthews kind of.
I don't think that relationship is something they can repair. Yeah, I don't think they can repair that relationship, but I think that you only get one crack at doing it, so they have to do it right.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, I think for the most part, when you look at it, it's going to have to be something big to come back to Buffalo. I mean, it seems like what they've done is load up on prospects and picks, and if they're going to do it for Eichel, then they're going to have to try to at least get something good out of the situation, because obviously from the last handful of years of guys they traded, from O'Reilly and now losing Ullmark today and all that stuff. But a couple more things from the Flyers. They signed 3 guys for the NHL team. They signed a handful of guys for AHL depth as well. For the NHL players, you have Yandel, who signs a 1-year deal worth $900,000. Martin Jones, which is 1 year at $2 million, not Seth Jones. And then also Nate Thompson. He comes back to the Flyers, and he signs a 1-year deal worth $800,000. So in total, 3.7, 3.8 for 3 players. You fill up a backup goaltender, a veteran D, and a fourth line center. Bill, any thoughts on those guys?
Sure, and before I get into the Flyers have 8.01 million left to get Hart and Sanheim re-signed, which should be enough for that. A little bit left over. I think I'd like to see just a little more cap space than that, but you know, I guess they have between now and early in the season and all that.
Like a 2 million mark.
Yeah. I think that I'd like to see a little more breathing room than that, but we'll see how all that plays out. Yandel, I mean, listen, it's a 1 year deal. You can't argue with Yandel for 1 year at $900,000. He basically just buys time for Cam York. It's hard. It's hard for a 20-year-old in many cases to jump right into the NHL, particularly with all the expectations that'll be on him. He'll be a power play guy when he comes up here. You know, Yandel can run a power play. If there's nothing else he can still do, he can still run a power play. Play third pairing minutes, play power play,
with Braun too.
Be a good guy in the room. And and exactly, same thing. Braun is just steady Eddie type. Will play on the PK for a third pair. That's not a bad third pair.
That's a really good third pair.
And I feel like it is. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like the offense with Yandel kind of cancels out with the defense from Braun, because Yandel doesn't give you the best defensively, but Braun doesn't give you the best offensively. So it kind of goes hand in hand.
Oh, sure. And if Yandel's only playing 14 minutes a night, of which 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes are on the power play, that's not a bad way to use him. And Braun, many of his minutes will be on the PK. A lot of times teams will combine the puck-moving offensive guy with the defensive guy. I said, and for some reason, one of your other pairings is struggling, you could move Braun back with Sanheim here and there. I mean, they played together before, so it's I think I think the pairings that we've mentioned are what the Flyers have in mind as the regular pairings. But you can, there are going to be games where you're going to switch because one pairing is going, one pairing's not going. So they have a little flexibility in there, and I think Sam Morin will be the number 7.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think if Morin is a 7D shoe in for $750,000, I have no issue with it all. And that's kind of the same with Thompson too. I mean, 1 year, $800,000. That's a very easy contract. You could throw him as the 4C 13 forward, and again, he's another guy that's been here before. Good at faceoffs, penalty kill. He was one of the best Flyers players in the playoffs actually in faceoff percentage. I think for a while there he had like an average like 60% faceoff percentage, which was really good. Probably one of the reasons why you saw him so much. But overall,
very very good faceoffs, very good at PK. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure.
And one last thing, Martin Jones. That one kind of not surprised me, but he wasn't the number one guy I had on my list of the Flyers. That was probably the last goaltender I would have looked at. Is there anything you have on Jones?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been thinking a whole lot about Jones today. I think, again, you add a little context to it because every San Jose goalie has struggled for the last 3 years. It hasn't only been Jones. Devin Dubnyk really struggled there, and he's been a good goalie in the NHL. So is Jones, right? Aaron Dell had some pretty good success as Jones's backup, and then all of a sudden he went south at the same time too. And I mean, a lot of it is because San Jose is not the team that it was, for many years, a contending team. So that's why they got Jones for 1 year and $2 million coming off the buyout. Holtby had to take $2 million too from Dallas. So you're it's a little bit of a reclamation project. I mean, there's no two ways about that, and that carries some risk to it. I'll be truthful and tell you that when Cam Talbot left Philadelphia and signed with Calgary, I think he's done. Several years at that point. Then he went to Calgary, and lo and behold, Cam Talbot put his game back together. So, it's hardly unheard of for something like that to happen. And yeah, he'd be in a backup role too to Hart. I mean, you want him to play well. You want him to give you a chance most of the time. I mean, it's the thing with Ryan Ellis is you can't get a lot of games out of him. That's the biggest thing with Moose. If they could, if they know they could get 30, 35 games, or if you needed 40 games out of Moose, then I think they would have re-signed him. Of course, Moose ended up signing with Tampa Bay, and that's a great situation for him because they'll back up Vasilevsky, and he's got a real crack in the Stanley Cup. Games. So I'm
right.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm happy for Brian. And actually, when he was doing spot start duty, he was pretty effective for the Flyers. It was when they were starting to have to use him 3 days a week, or when Hart would be down as the number one goalie, he would wear down and he would struggle. That was really what they thought they couldn't bring him back. But so with Jones, I think you take a wait and see attitude to that. He really, with all the signings, because you could look at any signing in there and you can find, okay, well, there's a certain amount of risk. There's an upside too. So you take the pieces in the whole. What's come out. What's gone in. I think on paper they have a chance to be a much better team, but we'll have to see how all that goes. So but I do have a pretty good degree of optimism, ahead of camp here.
Yeah, and I honestly I feel like Fletcher's done a good enough job to where you can. I think you have to give him some credit. I know people are hard on him, but I think he's addressed every need in every way possible. And as we said, still have a good amount enough of cap space now to re-sign your two biggest RFAs right now in Hart and Sanheim. One quick thing, and just one last question: what can you see those contracts being for Sanheim and Hart?
Well, with Hart, it's really going to depend on term. It's going to be a bridge deal either way. I don't think this is going to be the year when they commit, a really long-term deal, 6-7 years kind of thing, just because of the year he's coming off of. Right. So I think they do. 2 years ago, Sanheim got a 2-year deal, and it's a defenseman versus a goalie. But the point being that it's a player betting on himself. That you take a little, you take a bit of a raise, you get a bump for a couple of years, probably more in your next deal. And for the team, I mean, they want to see Hart get his game back together. So I don't necessarily think that he's going to get a huge raise. That everybody was thinking if he would have had the year this year, building off of the year before, and there are all those predictions coming into this year. Hey, this Carter might be up in the Vezina, race this year. Of course, it certainly didn't turn out that way. But if it had turned out that way, then I think then you are looking at trying to give him a long-term deal now and trying to lock him in at a number. I think now it's going to be 2-year deal, moderate raise. I'd be surprised if this deal came in at over 3. It might be a little under that if it was a 1-year deal. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's not going to be anything long-term. Sanheim, to me, is the trickier one of the two because Travis is arbitration eligible, whereas Hart is not. So his side could file for arbitration if they so choose. And that nobody ever wants to go to the arbitrator because it's a risk. And, when you have an arbitration hearing, the team presents all the negatives on the player, and that some players kind of can't handle that. It's just it's an adversarial kind of thing. So you try to avoid arbitration if you possibly can, and I think that they will. I think they'll come to an agreement. He's making, I think, $325, if I'm not mistaken, on his current contract.
2 years, 3.2.
Yeah. I've seen some things out on Twitter. Yeah. I saw one person on Twitter, well, don't pay him more than $2 million. Well, he's not going to take over $1 million pay cut. I can guarantee you that. He's in line for a raise. I would say though over that if you sign him really long term. But he's got what 5?
I was thinking like 3 years, so he's got $4 million.
Yeah, although the thing with 3, and maybe they don't mind doing it. But 3 years, you're kind of walking him right to unrestricted free agency. That's the
Yeah.
He's got
that's
3
the issue.
years in, 2 more. Yeah, and then you're so when that contract would expire, he'd be unrestricted. And they'd probably take that. Because again, it's a player betting on himself, and
right.
If he really has a couple big years, then he could really cash in the next time when he's got the leverage of unrestricted free agency on the other side of it. So it very well could be something along those lines. If it's another bridge deal, you'd want to allow at least one more restricted free agency before you're faced with that. That's really all the figuring that goes into it. I think that's going to be the most complicated of the contracts. And I mean, the Flyers also have to, you talked about the price the Flyers paid for Ristolainen, and that cannot be a 1-year rental that's that expensive. I'm thinking
to myself, like, if you just gave up a first-round pick, a second, and then a 7th, I'm like, and then Hag, I'm like, you gave up an NHL roster player, a first-round pick, and I'm like, regardless of however way you want to look at that draft, like, it's still a first-round pick, and if you don't re-sign him, then you're screwed. So that was another reason why I was kind of iffy on that.
And I don't know how all that's going to play out. I mean, if Ristolainen has a really big year, then all of a sudden maybe you're priced out on him. But you wouldn't have a lousy year either. So So I don't know. I don't know how all that's going to play out. I suspect because they knew Seth Jones wasn't going to resign. That's why they changed their focus to Ellis. I think they kind of have a sense they think they can get Ristolainen signed to an extension, but they have a lot of other things to figure out after the season too, starting with Couturier and Giroux. So right. I think while they're figuring all that out, they'll wait on Ristolainen and see how his season goes. But that's another issue. It's a concern.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think at this point, with the way that this off season's going, I'm ready to worry about that when it's an actual issue. At the moment, I'm ready for hockey to start back up and camp and everything. But Bill, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. And if you want to throw your
my pleasure,
and anything like that for people to follow you if they don't follow you already, which would be insane to me. But if anybody doesn't follow, if you want to put that down below.
Sure. It is at Bill Meltzer, just all spelled out. And you can find my work at the Flyers official website, PhiladelphiaFlyers.com or Flyers.NHL.com or NHL.Flyers.com. They make it so there's a bunch of different ways you can get there. I'm also the Flyers alumni as a Flyers alumni. .net. Sorry, we changed that.
Awesome. All right. Well, remember, guys, podcast articles, those links are on my channel. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you guys in the next one, and goodbye.